Hello, and welcome to Window on the World, where we speak with students who share their experiences about traveling and what it was like to integrate themselves in other countries as they took advantage of Missouri Southern study abroad opportunities. I'm your host, Jillian Wirtz, and today we're joined by one of our study abroad students, Alicia Henson. This past fall, Alicia took advantage of Missouri Southern's semester-long study abroad program, where she studied media arts exchange in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get some background. What's your major and what really made you want to travel abroad?
My major is mass communications, and I grew up in a small town, and I think growing up in a small town, I knew there was parts of the world that I hadn't experienced. And so, especially when I went to a New York Media Arts Conference back at my JUCO Cali Community College, that just really opened my eyes, and I was like, there's so much more I really want to see and experience. And so when I came to Missouri Southern State University, I heard about what a great exchange program they had and how it was actually very cost efficient. And because, you know, being a college student, a lot of times you don't have a whole lot of money. But this was actually a possibility where I could go to another country and I could experience that culture for not a whole lot out of pocket money.
Right, and so were you able to use like your student loans to kind of pay for that?
Yeah, student loans, financial aid goes towards it, but also MSSU also offers a scholarship that if you apply to it and they accept you, that also helps pay for your flight over there and back, because that can be pretty costly too. My flight, if I remember correctly, was about $1,100, and that sounds like
a lot for a student, yeah.
But luckily the scholarship covered that, and so I didn't have to worry about that expense when I went and traveled abroad. So Missouri Southern does a great job of making this opportunity extremely affordable to students.
Absolutely. So I know that it can be definitely really intimidating, especially coming from a smaller town, to just travel abroad in general, but studying abroad can absolutely be intimidating. So was there anything that you kind of did ahead of time before you left to like maybe study their culture or learn some of their language?
Absolutely. Going to the United Kingdom, you wouldn't think there would be a lot of differences, but there really is as far as the education program, but also just with the language itself and some things you need to know, especially with the currency. Like a pound, I think if you compare a pound to a dollar, a US dollar is 80 cents to a pound, and so you're losing quite a bit of money that way.
Right.
And so you have to make sure you really plan and budget that when you go abroad and know what you can and cannot afford. And so I made sure to really research that before I went and studied abroad.
Yeah, so you're kind of not like left without any money at the end of it. So was anything different? Because the language barrier isn't a huge issue, but did you find any issues with slang or anything like that?
Yes. I'll never forget the first time someone said, the queue's over there. I was like, what's the queue? And I was like looking around. That meant line. I remember I was so confused by this term because a queue, you know, it's like a circle. And so I was confused with why they called it a queue, but it's actually spelled Q-U-E. So it's not like just the letter Q, but that really threw me off the first time. And then other things they say, they have sayings that I just found, it kind of threw me off, like taking a piss means you're joking. And one time I was laughing with my friends and joking with her, and she said, oh, you're taking a piss at me. And I was like, no, I'm not using the restroom. What are you talking about? And it kind of like shocked me, but it was just this different language barriers. And so she explained it to me, no, it just means you're joking around. And so I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
I'm sure it's really kind of uncomfortable at some times when you just really don't understand, so you kind of have to go with the flow.
Yeah.
So what was one of your very first experiences like as soon as you got there? Did you stay in a dorm or like an apartment setting?
Yeah, I stayed in the dorm there on campus, so I didn't really have to worry about transportation that way, like getting to and from school. I could just walk there. But getting there, it was a little difficult. Again, not having been out of the country before or anything, it was definitely a scary time. I'm nervous that I wouldn't make a flight or I wouldn't find the gate or anything, but it was actually surprisingly easy, especially the Chicago airport. The only thing is that I did have a man follow me while I was at the Chicago airport.
That can be
that was my first experience, but I was smart about it, and I found some security guards who were sitting by, like in Subway eating, and so what I did is I just sat down and like ate by them, and he left me alone after that. So you just have to be really cautious and aware of your surroundings, because that was definitely intimidating because he clearly was following me, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna sit here by these security guards, and it all worked out. I'm fine. I didn't have any other experiences like that while I was abroad. It was just kind of off to a rocky start when I did have this man follow me. But besides that, I was perfectly safe once I actually got into England. I didn't have any other problems besides that. It was just there that one time in the Chicago airport. So
yeah, so everything seems pretty easy as far as transportation. So as soon as you got to Europe, what was transportation like there? Was it pretty easy to get around? You mentioned you didn't really have to do a lot of traveling as far as getting to campus and everything.
I think it's fairly simple in the UK. The only issue is when I went to Paris, I did go to Paris later on, that their metro system was a little bit different, and I did have a little bit more of a challenging time figuring that out, and that's probably because of the language and making sure that you can figure out the places and where they're going to.
Yeah, I guess that can be a little difficult. So what was the college that you studied at in the UK?
I studied at Plymouth University, and I was in their media arts exchange program. And so essentially what I studied was, like, they had workshops like for After Effects and sound, and also they just talked about different communication theories, and we got to learn more about filmings. It was really interesting since MSSU doesn't have some of those classes, and so I really enjoyed that, learning about some of those.
Yeah, so it's really nice to kind of implement some of those classes that we don't offer. And so what was it like? Was it pretty learning intensive over there compared to here, or what was the difference?
There was quite a few differences with their education program, like how they grade is a lot different. Instead of using letters, they use numbers.
Okay.
And so I believe, if I'm saying this right, a 1's the best you can do, and that kind of can transfer over to like an A or B depending on the 1 and how many 1s you get, because you get multiple numbers. So you could get like a 1, 2 or a 1, 3. So it's definitely a lot different. So that was a big difference right there. But also you only take, they call them 2 modules, and those each were worth, one was worth 40 credit hours and one was worth 20. So when you transfer that back over here, that's just 12 hours. But over there it sounds different because they're saying 20 and 40 credits. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work. And you're like, oh, 40 credits. Okay, wow. And so that was different too, just taking these 2 modules. But I did go in every day. It's just that for these modules you would do different things every day. It wasn't just every day you were going in and lecturing or you were in the same room. Every day you'd be doing different things. And so that was really great too. Yeah,
so was it a lot more difficult, would you say, like learning over there?
I wouldn't say it was more difficult. Homework-wise, I would say it was kind of similar because of what my major is. A lot of it was you had to make video projects. I got to do some animation, which I never had the chance to do before, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I never realized just watching how much work goes into making like clay figures move.
Right.
You know, like with each movement, you have to take like 5 shots of them just still before you can move on to the next movement. And if you mess up, you're wasting like hours of your time.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really careful with those projects. And so that was a lot of fun to do. And then also After Effects. We don't have a lot of workshops here, unfortunately. We do have the program, like the software, but we don't have a lot of workshops where you can learn more about the program and the software. And so that was great, learning a little more about After Effects, because it can be kind of tricky, everything you can do with it.
Right, so it was nice to get a couple extra opportunities to study some of those things. And so when you were there, did you take class every day, or were you able to kind of like do an every other day situation?
It depends on how involved you want to be. Their classes are not actually mandatory for you to attend, which was interesting. At the end of the term, I found out that I had this girl in my class who I'd never seen before. It's just because she didn't show up. She just did the homework outside. But I would say, as far as similarities and differences, I mean, I did have to write like a 3,000-word paper, and there was a lot of a reading involved along with the video editing. But it just really depends on what modules you're in and how active you are in your classes. So for me, I did show up every day to classes because, of course, I wanted to get the most out of my experience and my education. But then there was others who did not do that, and I think it's just really your preference and what you want to do and how much you want to get from what you purchase from your education.
Absolutely. So it seems like the culture there is a little bit different. I know that at least in America, some of the larger colleges and stuff, they don't really have a huge attendance program. But here, of course, we have an attendance program, and we typically have to be at class. So I'm sure it was kind of nicer, though. Had you known the option of kind of going to class, you'd have had a little bit more free time, I guess, if you wanted to not go.
There's definitely a culture shock, too, is that here, you know, all the campuses are dry campuses generally. And then there, it's the complete opposite. The university would actually throw parties for their students to attend and drink at. And so I'll never forget walking into the student center, there was a bar. I was like, wow, there's a bar here on campus, and they had all these fresher events. That's what they call them for freshmen. But of course I went because, I mean, you have to experience that. So they'd have these huge parties and raves for the students hosted by their university. And so that was a completely different culture too. I'm not saying like people in Britain are alcoholics or anything, but definitely just the experience there and what they do with their students is different.
Seems a lot more open, and everybody can kind of do their own thing. So when you got there, were you able to go to different places? You kind of mentioned that you went to Paris.
That was over a Christmas break. And I was able to go there because I mentioned my old JUCO college I went to before transferring here, Cali Community College. I met her there, and she was a roommate of mine, and we still talk. And so she heard that I was studying abroad. And so she actually offered, since I was going to be away during Christmas, she offered that I could go there and visit her in Paris.
So we've got a couple pictures up here of different places you went to. Talk about
And
some of those.
that's Amy right there, and that was just us in the local mall there. She lived in a city, it was called Viable, and it's like 40 minutes train ride away from Paris. And so that was her cat, and of course I had to get my cat experience in because I missed my own cat. I've been away for like 5 months, so it was nice. And that's the Eiffel Tower lit up at nighttime. And that was in front of Notre Dame. It's a statue there, and it was just really gorgeous. I love the coloring in it. And Notre Dame, definitely out of Paris, had to be my favorite place I visited. I mean, the stained glass windows and everything was just gorgeous. Yeah, that's another picture right there of Notre Dame.
So you were able to go inside?
Yes, and it was free, and so I highly suggest you visit it if you ever have the chance, because not only is it free, but it's just gorgeous.
Of course.
And it kind of makes you feel guilty, like just being in such a beautiful church, like even if you haven't done anything wrong, you're just sitting there and you're like, wow, I feel guilty just sitting in this gorgeous church.
Everything is so
amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, and I tried oysters for the first time, and that was an experience. This guy, he had to like teach me first how you have to kind of like use your finger to kind of get it detached from the shell, and then you kind of slurp it. And I gotta be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the flavor. It's a little too salty for me, but that was just a good experience, something new to try. So, oh, and that was a picture of one of the malls in Paris, and just the ceiling was even gorgeous.
And it looks like around
shopping
Christmas
was
time.
just a whole completely different experience there. And that was actually a theater, like where the Phantom of the Opera was filmed.
Oh,
that
really?
That was like one of the theaters. Gorgeous buildings, and that's just another gorgeous building in Paris. It's just, the architecture there really is just overwhelmingly beautiful, everything they have. And that's the Eiffel Tower, where there are a lot of con artists. I didn't know this before going there, but around the Eiffel Tower there's a lot of con artists, and actually a couple of 13-year-old girls. We thought we were signing a petition, but then later they're like, no, actually we need you to give us money.
Oh,
and
wow.
they like guilt tripped us into it. They're like, you already signed this, so you kind of have to give us money. And they're like 13-year-old girls, and you're like, can we really refuse these 13-year-old girls? So we ended up giving them some money. And there's a lot of con artists out there, so if you ever do go, definitely watch out for that. And again, that's just another really gorgeous building that's in Paris. I just like the dome shape of it. It's just really, the architecture is very beautiful. And that's the Sacred Heart Chapel in Paris. Was also very beautiful. I went there on my last day of Paris. Oh, I love to read, and so we went to a bookstore. It was called the Shakespeare bookstore, and it was just really old and very vintage. One of those places you have to see in Paris if you love to read. And that's the outside of it. Oh, and that was just a picture of one of the buildings or houses in Viable, just how different they are. They're more narrow, and so that was very interesting, just seeing how different some of the villages even are when compared to here in the U.S. Oh, and that's just another picture of the mall and some of the stuff there. Oh, and then food. You always got to take pictures of the sweets. Yeah.
So it looks like you had so much fun in Paris. That looks like a beautiful place to go. And so you were able to visit there, and then what were some of the other places you were able to go to?
I also went on a class trip to Berlin, Germany. And that was a great experience because I went with my class, and so actually a lot of the cost was covered. Essentially all you had to pay for was your food. But we went on this trip to Berlin, Germany, and we visited like art galleries, we visited like a Holocaust camp, and then also did some touring of the city. And so that was a statue they had there that was gorgeous. And it was great exploring around there. It was cold, it was snowing at the time we went there.
Yeah.
And it was just funny because a lot of the people from Britain, they were excited because you don't get a lot of snow in Plymouth since it's near the ocean. So they're all excited. I'm over here like, I get snow all the time. Right. It's going to be cold. I was like, oh. Oh, and that was the Berlin Wall. That was great to walk next to. I mean, just the history there. It was great. And then just seeing how they took something that was a sign of oppression and how they had artists come and paint art. It was just great to see that. And they took something that could have been ugly and they tried to make it beautiful.
Right, yeah.
So that was really great, just walking next to the wall. And that's a political statement right there that I thought was funny. They have two political candidates kissing each other. I thought that was funny. Oh, that's a chicken doner. And it was huge and it was so good. The chicken in it was so fresh and it was really tasty. And that's pictures from an art gallery. It was really great just going. I'd never had a chance to go to an art gallery, and so being an artist, it was just amazing seeing some of the work people were putting up as media artists. So that was a great experience as well. And that was great too. I really liked how it was kind of warped, how they had the arms looking different. it's just amazing what you can do with art and what can be considered art.
Absolutely, it is so much different.
Oh, and that's pictures of the concentration camp. That's actually the pit where a lot of the mass murders occurred. It was a very humbling experience because it happened to be cold when we were there touring, and so it really made you think about how these people had limited clothing on and how they'd have to stand outside for hours.
Absolutely.
And so it was just very depressing going, and that's the wreckage of old gas chambers where, again, people were murdered. And so it was just a very humbling experience going and seeing these places. I mean, you hear about it in history, but then when you go there to the place, it makes it all the more real for you.
Right, absolutely.
So that was great.
I can't imagine what a learning experience that was, just going into all those different places. So what was one of your favorite things that you did with all the different places you went to?
One of the favorite things I did, I also did go to London, and one of my favorite things there, it's always been a dream of mine to see the Phantom of the Opera live. And so I was able to go with my boyfriend. He came down to visit me. His dad's a pilot, and so that worked out really well.
Oh, wow.
And so we went and saw the Phantom of the Opera live. I dragged him to it, and it was amazing. Oh, yeah. And I actually got to see it in the theater it originated at.
Oh, wow.
It was Her Majesty's Palace. That's the name of it. And so that was great to just go there, and I was lipping along the words because I knew every single word. I've watched the movie so many times, and it really was amazing. They actually had the chandelier that they could move on their stage. It was a really intricate setting. It was absolutely worth it, and the tickets we got were super cheap. So it was
everything
an
worked
amazing
out really well.
experience.
Yeah.
And that is the Buckingham Palace and Big Ben. Of course, you have to go there.
Big Ben.
Yeah. All the tourist sites. We did go on the London Eye. For me, I wouldn't recommend it, but that's because I don't like heights too much.
It's really scary when you get up there.
And so going on, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to stand here in the middle. That's fine. But Kyle loved it, so I was like, all right, you have your fun. I'll just be right here and eat this chocolate, and it'll be fine.
But it's good that you went on there,
so,
though.
yeah, I mean, you can say you can do it.
Yeah.
And then that's just some of the food. Of course, they have chips with everything, even lasagna. Here, we wouldn't think to pair fries with that, but that's just there.
Right.
They call them chips, and so that's just always fun. They just put it with everything, and they're good, too. So it was,
of course,
the food there was fun. And that's just at the Harry Potter studio. We also went there while we were in London. And that was for him. He's a big Harry Potter fan. And so it was his birthday. I missed it while I was abroad. And so I took him there. And that was fun. I mean, even if you're not a huge Harry Potter fan, you can still go and enjoy it.
It's such an experience to see it.
Because you learn a lot about film and how much actually went into those movies. You don't think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot,
once you get there, you really do see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. That sounds like you had so much fun, and you'll have to definitely see everything, all the Harry Potter stuff here, of course, and kind of compare. So, what was, I guess right when you got there, your first experiences, you said it was a little difficult, transportation and stuff like that. Were you able to really integrate yourself after time to just...
into the culture?
Just to kind of figure out how everything worked in day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think so, because language was not a barrier for me since I went to the UK. And so I was able to hang out with students, and the students were extremely friendly and extremely welcoming, and so we'd go out to the pubs occasionally, and we got to know each other. And I think that was a really great thing, just experiencing that and meeting new people. And as far as the culture goes, again, everyone was just really welcoming. I was kind of worried. Sometimes Americans have a bad rep.
Absolutely. Kind of a bad rep for stuff like that. So that's kind of good you were able to really get yourself into that culture and kind of familiarize yourself. And so did you have any struggles? You mentioned kind of in the O'Hare airport, a few struggles there, but when you got there, you said you just really have to notice your surroundings.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that my dad always says, just be aware, and that's true. I was aware, and so I took care of the problem. And when I occasionally, I'll admit, I did walk by myself a couple of times to leave clubs early or something when my friends didn't want to, but the biggest thing is you know what you can and cannot do.
Absolutely.
And so you need to be aware of your surroundings. And I never had any problems after the airport thing. I don't know what happened there or why, but you really need to be careful. And as long as you're smart about what you do, I mean, you shouldn't travel by yourself, absolutely. But sometimes if you have to get out of a club for a reason, then do it, and just be careful and definitely make sure you know what's going on around you.
Right. So what are some, I guess just besides some tips for safe traveling, of course, what are some tips that you would give students who want to study abroad as far as maybe preparing themselves or getting integrated with the culture?
I would say the biggest tips I could give for someone who's going to be studying abroad is, yes, you are going to miss your family. I mean, that's going to happen. And I mean, over Christmas time, Thanksgiving time, it does become a little bit difficult. But I think the biggest tips is that, I mean, you do have Skype, you do have these technologies you can use to stay connected with your friends and family, and don't let that fear of going off by yourself be the reason that you don't study abroad, because it is 100% worth it. You'll love every minute of it, and yes, okay, occasionally you might get a little homesick, but the experience is priceless, and it is completely worth it, just going and seeing all these beautiful sights.
Yeah. So what was a difference when you got back to the States? You have just one semester or 2 semesters left of school?
I'm graduating this May, so this is my final semester.
Nice. So what was it like getting back this semester and kind of going back to your regular way of going to class?
For me, it was very challenging because I had missed 2 weeks of classes. My term got over actually February, like January 28th. Really? So I came back, had one night with my family before I had to come back here, move all my stuff in. And so fighting jet lag and then trying to catch up on missing 2 weeks of homework was definitely a challenge, especially since the homework here is a little bit different. We do have a lot more papers to write, I would say, and exams to study for. Like when I was abroad, I didn't have any exams. Yes, I did have video projects I had to do, and I did have a couple papers I had to write, but it wasn't as
intensive,
varied,
I guess. Yeah.
Because there I was only taking 2 classes, while here I'm taking 18 credit hours, so that's like 5 or 6 classes, and so you have homework for each of those classes. And so a big difference is definitely just getting back on track and being able to handle that workload again. That's one of the bigger challenges, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully you end this semester, you know, on the right foot with getting back in there, and it seems like you had kind of a hard time getting back into it.
I mean, I did okay. I mean, my grades are still good. It was definitely overcoming like being exhausted from the jet lag, because England is 6 hours ahead.
Yeah,
and so that was a big challenge. But besides that, I mean, after the first couple weeks of being back now, I'm back on track and everything. That was just one of the biggest challenges I had to overcome because of how my term ended. Yeah. Because it was a little bit longer than some of the others.
Yeah, and all of that can definitely add to your experience going to classes now and learning and kind of integrating that with how you're learning in all the classes this semester. So thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully everybody can take away some tips from studying abroad. For more information on studying abroad, you can log on to Missouri Southern's website at mssu.edu and click the link at the top, or you can contact Dr. Chad Stebbins at stebbins-c@mssu.edu. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jillian Wirtz. We'll see you next time.